How's it going, everyone? Coach Javi here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be answering a very simple but at the same time very difficult question. When should you retire from football? So this is a question that pops up at random times on my videos in the comment section, and while I think it's really up to you based on a lot of different factors, I'll try and give you guys a little bit of guidance to make it easier to answer that question. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. I want to start off by saying that first of all, you should probably chase the dream as long as you possibly can while you're still young, because the difference between players who retire and players who are still playing is one thing, and that's the ability to move. So players like David Beckham, Ronaldinho, the reason that they retired is because they physically couldn't keep up with the movement of the game. If you pass them a ball, their touch is still really good. Their tactical understanding of the game is probably even better than when they retired. However, they're physically not able to keep up with the players running over 90 minutes. So I do want you to understand that if you do retire and 10 years later you change your mind, you're not going to be able to do it because your body's not going to be able to do it anymore. So chase the dream as long as you can. But I want to give you guys some questions that you can ask yourselves that might make it easier for you to make that decision. So first of all, I want you guys to understand that age is not the question. Certain players develop a lot earlier than others, and obviously you always have players who are late bloomers who still have as good of an opportunity to make it as some of those who developed a little bit earlier. So if we think about players like Freddie Adu, I'm not sure how many of you guys remember Freddie Adu, but when he was 14 years old, they made a big deal about him joining the MLS, said he was going to be the next great superstar, and at the age of 14, they already had him playing at the highest level of United States soccer. The reason some of you guys probably don't know who Freddie Adu is because pretty much shortly after that, Freddie Adu didn't perform as well as a lot of people expected him to, and he went from team to team to team, and I think now he might be playing in the USL Championship somewhere. So he's still playing professionally. However, his career didn't go as many had hoped for. When he was 14 and he was playing against other 14-year-olds, he had developed really early, and he was playing at a level much higher than his. However, he did plateau and his development didn't end up going much further. And then you think about other players in the world like Jamie Vardy. Jamie Vardy at the age of 14 probably wasn't anywhere near as good as Freddie Adu was at that age, and it took him a little bit longer to properly develop and bloom into what he is today, which is a world-class footballer. He ended up winning the Premier League with Leicester when he was almost 30 years old. So if he had thought that because he didn't develop at such an early age like other players in the world, he might have given up on his dream a little bit too early. So he stuck with it, and because his development did continue to increase and it didn't plateau like other players, he ended up becoming a successful footballer and is now playing in the Premier League and of course for the national team of England. You also have special cases or players who are at the extreme like Zlatan. Zlatan is 39 years old and he's playing some of the best football that he's played in his career, and the way he's playing doesn't show any sign of him slowing down. Take age out of the question and I think it's going to be a little bit easier for you. I also want you guys to factor in your health. Think about how many injuries you've had in the past and how prone you are to injury. So some players, like myself for example, towards the end of their career start getting a lot more injuries. It's hard for them to complete a full season without pulling a hamstring, without tearing ACL, tearing your meniscus, some major injury that's going to prevent you from being consistent over the length of a season. So how have these injuries affected your ability to stay fit over 90 minutes, but also over the entire season? I know a lot of players who have had to retire because they've had multiple concussions, they've torn their ACL multiple times, they've had multiple surgeries, and they feel like no matter what they do, they can't stay healthy. And while I think it is important to factor in your injuries, don't let that be the only reason why you think you might need to retire. You guys have seen George Shamakov on the channel. Georgie's gone through so many different injuries. Because he does his rehab and because he takes care of his body to the best of his ability, he's able to come back from those injuries a little bit stronger each time. So for some players, it is unfortunate to say they will end up retiring because of injuries. Other players, it makes them a little bit stronger. You also should be asking yourself, what has your development looked like over the years? Has there been consistent growth? Have you improved, and is it measurable? In previous years, were you always riding the bench and now you're starting to be a starter in every single team that you play for? Think about the team that you're playing on currently. Is it a team that's playing at a better level than the previous teams you've played for? And how do you feel like you've grown as a player over the last few years? There's players that we get for Detroit City FC who have played in the MLS and now they're playing in Niça. Because their careers are starting to spiral downwards, they're starting to realize that this is closer towards the end of their career. They're probably not going to go back to the MLS, and they're probably not going to go to any higher division than what they're at right now. So they're starting to think about retirement. You think about the MLS and the reputation that it has for being a retirement league for European players. A lot of those European players, when they come to the MLS, they start realizing, okay, it's going to be time to start thinking about retirement soon. And then of course you get players like Zlatan who can come to the MLS and then go right back to Europe and be even better than they were before they came here. So make sure you're able to analyze your recent past and you feel like you're going in an upwards direction as opposed to starting to go downhill. Another question you should be asking is, have I identified realistic goals? So when we're younger and people ask us what we want to do for a living or what we want to do when we grow up, we say we want to be professional footballers. And when they ask us specifically where we want to play, we say we want to play for Real Madrid, we want to play for Arsenal, we want to play for the national team of Mexico. As you get older and then that actually starts becoming a reality of being a professional footballer, you have to start identifying some realistic goals. Before, when you wanted to go and play in the Premier League, now you're starting to think, okay, maybe USL Championship or maybe Nisa is the right level for me to be at the moment, and then maybe I can go up from there. Because now as you get older, you're going to be a little bit more realistic and realize that the Premier League is no longer an option. On top of that, when you have identified the level that is appropriate for you, if we're thinking about the USL Championship or Nisa, is that going to be good enough? You're starting to get older, maybe you have a girlfriend, maybe you have kids now. Is that level going to be enough for you to be able to provide for your family? We had a player on our roster who was about to have his first child. So for him, the idea of having to provide for his family was no longer an option at the level that he was playing at. And because he felt that it would be better to chase maybe a different career, he had to provide for his family. It was time for him to retire and do something else. One of the most important questions that you should also be asking yourself is, do you have a backup plan? I've known a lot of players who have decided not to have a backup plan because they feel like they shouldn't doubt themselves on their way to becoming a professional footballer. They think having a backup plan means I'm not fully invested in myself, I don't fully trust myself to do this, so no backup plan means I have to get this done and I have to achieve it because there's no other way. The reason I don't like that kind of thinking is because you can't control everything on your journey. The biggest and easiest thing to see is injuries. You cannot control injuries. You could be the best footballer on the field, and if someone on the other team has just decided that they don't want to put up with you anymore and they come in and two-foot tackle you and end your career, what are you going to do then, right? Find something else that you're passionate about that you can have as a backup plan if this doesn't work. You can still maintain that mindset of not giving up, chasing that professional career, or staying in football as long as you possibly can, but just having a backup plan makes it so much easier in the case that you do get injured and your career is over. My biggest suggestion is get yourself a degree, find something else that you're extremely passionate about, that no matter if your footballing career is over, you still have that as a backup plan and you're still going to be happy. The last thing, and probably the most important thing I want to say, is do it because you love it, not because you're trying to fulfill someone else's expectations or expectations that maybe you had when you were younger. I'm going to end this video by telling you guys a little bit of a story about myself. When I was growing up, I always told myself that I was going to be a professional footballer. And I was fortunate enough to be probably the best player in my town or in my high school or in my general area. Everybody knew me as the kid who probably had the best opportunity of playing professional football. So that was kind of the label that was given to me. And I felt like because I had made it this far, I was going to fail if I didn't sign a professional contract. Pretty early in my college career, when I was playing, probably 2 years in, I realized that I wasn't as passionate about it as maybe other people were or I had been when I was younger. And it was difficult for me to come to terms with the idea that I could give up and I could retire and I would end my career without signing a professional contract. At that time, I was only chasing the dream and I was only playing football because I felt like I had to sign that contract and make everyone happy or make those expectations complete. When I finally sat down with myself and I came to terms with the fact that I loved coaching more than I loved playing and that playing was no longer a passion of mine, that's when I decided it was okay to let go of all those expectations, play for the fun of it, enjoy myself, and not feel like I failed the people that were around me when I was growing up. I'm gonna finally end by saying that you should chase the dream as long as you want, as long as you are passionate about it. Completely ignore this entire video and all the things that I talked about if you still have an enormous passion for playing professional football or getting to the highest level that you can get to, because ultimately that's the most important part, is having that passion. So that's it for me, guys. We're gonna end that video there. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you liked it. And yeah, till next time, and adios, muchachos.